Indiana goes into Eugene, into Alton Stadium, and upsets Oregon. They beat them pretty handily there in the fourth quarter, if you ask me, and how they dominated that fourth quarter. But Indiana clips Oregon. Joe, when you recap this game, what are your thoughts?
Blake, I think that this game, is somebody who has been an aggressive supporter of Curt Cignetti, this is the vindication. This is the vindication for this Indiana fan base that had believed that their team was trending in the right direction. I'm not directly calling you out because there were a lot more outlets out there that were a lot more.
Didn't think they were going to win. You can. Yeah. I'm okay with it.
There were other outlets that were a lot more negative than you were, that did not think that Indiana had remotely any chance because they weren't physical enough. They weren't talented enough along the lines of scrimmage, all of those things. And Blake, they set the tone. They set the tone throughout this performance by manning up at the line of scrimmage, stopping Oregon from running the football, smothering Dante Moore, and then running the rock and converting when they needed to. Blake, they won this game by true Curt Cignetti fashion, which was playing to their identity, playing fundamentally sound football, and punching their opponent in the face for 4 quarters. I like this Indiana team, man. I have liked it. I was not expecting them to win, but I thought that at the very least they would win this thing close, and we would still feel very strongly that this Indiana team was a legit threat to win the Big Ten this year. But Blake, they took the step forward that nobody expected. Pat Coogan and some of these O-line guys that they brought in the portal, huge for them taking that step. They're deep at running back. And most importantly, Fernando Mendoza is awesome. Dude is a baller. The pick that he had was bad, but some of the other throws that he had in this game and the runs that he had were clutch. And this kid is phenomenal and exciting to watch every single time he plays. I'm in on this Indiana team. I think that that win is incredibly legit, and we need to be treating them with a lot more respect.
I look at them and say, you're right. Physically, they're a lot different than they were a year ago. And I don't know if Illinois was the proper test, and you didn't play anybody with a pulse outside of Illinois that could really test you. But they go into Autzen, who had the longest win streak at home in the country, and you held Oregon to 3 of 14 on third down. The physical play and the relentless pressure that they had on Dante Moore all night was telling, very telling. Mm-hmm. I thought Will Stein kind of got out coached and out schemed, especially in that second half when things started getting close. And I felt like Indiana never really, I don't know the word, never really, like panicked. Like even in the Mendoza pick 6, I never felt like they panicked.
No.
Their wide receiver room is also very physical that we'll talk about, but the way that they physically looked up front on both lines of scrimmage and holding them to 3 of 14 on third down. Joe, their linebacker play was exceptional. Borderline elite, if we're going to be honest. The way that they fit the run game, Joe, they're basically running a 4-3 with a hybrid at safety coming down in the box, and they're able to cover. They're downhill. They're very physical. Oregon went for it on multiple fourth downs. They got some. They didn't get one. But on third down, Joe, there were times that Oregon just tried to simply line up and run the football and couldn't do it. They could get zero push on this Indiana team. And so I look at Indiana and like they do everything well when you look at the game versus Oregon. But, Joe, you're right. They run the football very effectively. Hemby, I know he only had 2 catches, but, Joe, both of them came on third down. Some of the runs that you had from Mendoza, like you mentioned, were on third down. They played very effective, and they did everything right. But I felt like that going into this game, it would be Indiana that the moment was a little too big for, right? It felt even with Oregon going into Penn State, and you were like, well, I mean, look, Penn State is what Penn State is, but they went on the road. They were able to overcome with a young team, and they won. Joe, this wide receiver room for Indiana continued to force pass interferences with how physical they were. Surratt was one of my top 5 skill players, remember, in the Big Ten, and I know that we had a long conversation about that. Is he not now? Because, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I mean, brother, at some point, you run up against 2 really damn good corners, and by the way, 8 catches, over 100 yards, and a score. The back shoulder throw to Mendoza was absolutely ridiculous. They look great, man. They looked really good. But they out-physicaled Oregon when it mattered most, on every third down, on every run play. They were the ones getting after. The blitz packages that they sent after Dante Moore and the confusion that they had for him, I thought he couldn't overcome and was able to propel them to the win.
I think one part that needs to be really emphasized for how well Indiana played. Oregon's offense is predicated on getting their athletes in space.
Yes.
It is all building success off of shorter route concepts and allowing those guys to win after the catch. They've been a little bit more aggressive downfield with Dante Moore, and in one of the touchdowns that the touchdown that he threw in this game was one of those deep shots. This was a game where Indiana had to be incredibly fundamentally sound, had to play tight to their assignments, keep everything in front of them. And they did that consistently on every single drive. The 6 sacks that they generated in this game as well was also incredibly impressive. That is where I believe where we have to really just not talk about Indiana as the up-and-coming team that has done some nice things and actually legitimately respect them as a legit threat this year. Because the physical nature in which they played when last year, their lack of ability to match intensity against their opponents, against Notre Dame and Ohio State, cost them. This year, and I'm not implying that this means that they're going to beat Ohio State if they were to get to the Big Ten championship game. We will have to see what happens there. I would likely pick Ohio State. But Blake, the way that they have set the tone already this year relentlessly is an indication that they are a far different team than last year. And I just ask for anybody who's going to talk about this Indiana team to stop using last year as a reference when this year's team is clearly different. More importantly, that this year's team has so much veteran experience. Aiden Fisher, D'Angelo Pons, Kamara, who is a fantastic pass rusher. You've got so much experience, and it's showing up and it's showing out. This is why, and the last thought here, it was so stupid hearing people say, who's going to be this year's Indiana? People are saying Illinois. You know who's this year's Indiana? It's Indiana. Indiana's going to keep proving you wrong. The more you keep doubting them.
You know what they meant.
I know what they meant, but I'm just saying that there's no such thing as replicating what this Indiana team has done in a short period of time. No one turns around a program this quickly. Nobody sets them up for success this quickly. Nobody is winning games like this on the road in a year and a half. Curt Cignetti earned the respect that he should be getting. And I'm going to keep saying that until they maybe inexplicably get upset, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Well, look, I know that Indiana went 5 of 13 or 5 of 14 on third down. It's not good. So I'm about to praise this, but you weren't great on third down. Fernando was not great on third down throwing the football. However, the 5 they did get, boy, it felt like every time it was the most critical parts of the game. Right, you're battling. You got a close game. Fernando runs for 2. You have Hemby that runs for 1. Then you have an out route to Surratt that gets you a first down. It just always felt like, all right, if Oregon gets off the field here, boy, they got a chance here to really tie it, go up, score, whatever. But the thing for me with Indiana that was the most impressive was how they suffocated Oregon offensively in the second half. Joe, here's the play log. You ready? Punt, field goal, punt, interception, interception. End of game. They completely suffocated Oregon and Will Stein in the second half. The only score that you got was the field goal. And Joe, if you're only going to have a half where your offense is only generating 3 points, you're not going to beat these high-level teams. You won't beat top 10 teams offensively if you're going to play like that. Now, Indiana did some things to keep you in the games. They had a turnover on downs. They had the pick 6 that tied it. They couldn't completely put them away in the second half until the very end. But, Joe, it's the second half where you look at Indiana and the game plan that they had for Dante Moore and they're still young. but this young Oregon team that they simply didn't have an answer for. And that's the part where it's so impressive that, listen, you're going into halftime if you're Indiana, and it's 13-10. So you got to lead, but the problem is, Joe, is you only gave up 3 points defensively. And what is the thing that we talk about the most in college football in general? Defense and run game travels. And what happened when you got in the goal line? Well, you kept running the ball and you got in. What happened in the second half to win you that football game? We get lost in the Mendoza and Surratt and the PIs because it's flashy. You're right. No. Joe, that linebacking play yesterday, and especially in the second half for Indiana, Joe, I got to be real with you.
That's the best part about this team, dude. That is seriously.
Well, hold on. Hot take. I ain't seen a linebacking core play that good against an opponent all year. Not with this magnitude.
Yeah.
So they completely suffocated things, and they made Dante Moore's life a living hell. And everybody wants to talk about Indiana and Cignetti. It's the front seven defensively that completely dominated that second half that led them to the win.
And I just want to add in here.
Hold on 1 second. What happens when if Indiana and Mendoza don't have that pick six? I know it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, well, you're right.
If you take that out, got to be real with you. They spanked that ass, and then when you look at the time of possession and they win the time of possession, Joe, they dominated Oregon in the second half. Sorry to interrupt you there, but it's just the truth.
Right, and it's kind of something that gets removed, but you're also right. We probably shouldn't do the shoulda, coulda, woulda bit because the game was what it was. But I think that two different perspectives on the paths of these teams. Indiana is absolutely in the driver's seat for the rest of the season.
They might not lose. They might not lose another game.
Purdue, Wisconsin, Penn State, Maryland, UCLA, Michigan State. I want to just address Oregon because I think that a lot of times our listeners that are fans of specific teams are a bit doom and gloom, and sometimes they think maybe we're also being really negative about their teams.
Yeah, let's get to Oregon.
Oregon's going to be fine. They're going to be fine. You don't have to be perfect every single week in the modern version of college football. You don't. A 10-2, 11-1 Oregon team gets to the college football playoff. And their schedule, more importantly, allows for them to round out their resume enough because they get a matchup with USC, who hopefully will be ranked, and Washington could theoretically be ranked at the end of the year.
Why is Washington not ranked, by the way? They're 5-1. Their only loss is to Ohio State, but that's completely
and BYU was a team that was ranked 18th on the last ballot before this week's. It makes no sense to me. And Iowa State was also 22nd before they lost to Colorado, which was incredibly stupid. Yeah, Washington is one of the most undervalued teams. But to my point here, you didn't play as effectively as you should. Your issues that you had, I think, are resolvable because you just went into a matchup where you were outcoached. The opposing defense knew how to attack you, and they outcoached you, and they outperformed you. You have a smart enough coaching staff that you can adjust and bounce back. It's plain and simple. I'm not buying out on Oregon at all.
No, they're still very young. They're skill players. Joe, they turned to two freshman running backs.
Yeah.
The lead guy that they need on the outside is a true freshman. They will continue to be better. They got to find a run game consistently. Dante Moore cannot be your consistent run game. And I got to be real with you. I think Will Stein is one of the better play callers in the country. Why in the Sam hell are you going offset I and trying to bully ball a team that you might have a little bit more speed than on the outside? And I'm not saying you do have more speed, but at what point in the first half when you couldn't run the ball out of an offset I, left or right, that you just said, hey, maybe we try to get to the edge?
And they kept running these formations where Dante Moore was offset and they were snapping to a running back. I'm the biggest problem. I like gimmicks are fun, but when the gimmicks don't work, you just need to line up and play football.
It's so fun when you see a 365-pound offensive tackle taking a direct snap once a game.
Yeah.
However, when you're doing it multiple times, it's like, to be real with you, it's what got Andy Kotelnicki and them beat yesterday. It's what got them beat against you. Like, how did you not learn when it's literally You literally went on the road and won a game on a team that got a little too gimmicky. I'm not trying to call him out, but you get to brother, you got suffocated. Like an Indiana team came in there in the second half, made adjustments, and quite frankly, Joe, Indiana spanked that ass. And I hate to put it like that, and I'm a massive Oregon fan, but yesterday was not your day. This is what I'd say to Oregon. You beat Ohio State last year, and you faced them off against the Rose Bowl in the playoff, and then they whipped you. You got a long way to go with a young team. You're going to be fine. I completely agree with you. Oregon fans, just relax here. All right.